A blind date set up as a joke turns into something so unexpected that it changes lives, exposes truths, and makes the entire country stop to watch the outcome. Sarah Mitchell had never been fond of surprises. Her life was carefully structured between her work as an accounting analyst, caring for her sick mother, and the silences she had imposed on herself since her trust was shattered. Years ago, she had bet everything on a relationship that ended in humiliating fashion. The man she trusted had used her savings, money meant for her mother's treatment, to open a business with another woman, her then best friend, and disappeared from the city without warning. Since then, Sarah had stopped believing in promises, kind looks, and happy endings. Life for her was safer when kept under control. She had built walls so high around her heart that even she sometimes forgot what it felt like to let someone in. Every morning followed the same ritual: wake at 6, prepare her mother's medication, catch the bus to downtown Portland, arrive at the accounting firm by 8:30, and disappear into spreadsheets until evening. Numbers made sense. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't break promises or steal dreams. The office where Sarah worked was a maze of grey cubicles and fluorescent lights that hummed constantly, like a tired heartbeat. Most of her colleagues were pleasant enough, keeping their distance and respecting her preference for quiet. But Paula Richardson was different. Paula was loud, always laughing too hard at jokes that weren't funny, always organizing happy hours Sarah never attended, always pushing her way into conversations where she wasn't needed. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, during one of those mandatory team lunches at the sandwich shop around the corner, that Paula made her move. Sarah had been trying to finish her turkey wrap quickly, hoping to escape back to her desk, when Paula slid into the seat across from her, with that particular smile that meant trouble. "Sarah, honey, I've been meaning to talk to you," Paula said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "There's someone who wants to meet you." Sarah looked up from her wrap, already preparing her polite refusal. "I'm not interested, Paula. Thanks anyway. Oh, come on. You haven't even heard about him yet." Paula leaned forward conspiratorially. "He's a single dad, very discreet, successful. And he specifically asked about you. Said he prefers women who are more, quieter types." The way Paula said quieter made Sarah's stomach turn. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation delivered with barely concealed mockery, as if being reserved was something to be pitied or fixed. I said no. "Paula, I'm not interested in blind dates or setups or whatever this is." Paula shrugged, but there was something in her eyes that made Sarah uneasy. "Suit yourself. Just thought you might want to, get out there again. Life's too short to spend it alone with spreadsheets." The comment stung more than Sarah wanted to admit. She finished her lunch in silence and returned to her desk, trying to push the conversation out of her mind. But throughout the afternoon, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Paula's offer. It was too casual, too insistent, too deliberately cruel in its packaging. At 4:30, Camilla Santos appeared at Sarah's cubicle. Unlike Paula, Camilla was genuine, the only person at the firm Sarah considered a real friend. They had started on the same day 3 years ago and had bonded over terrible coffee and shared frustrations with the company's outdated software systems. Camilla was the kind of friend who remembered your mother's favorite flowers and brought soup when you were sick. "Sarah, we need to talk," Camilla said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Can you meet me in the parking garage after work?" Sarah felt her anxiety spike. "What's wrong?" "Not here. Just meet me, okay? It's important." The rest of the afternoon crawled by with excruciating slowness. Sarah made mistakes in her calculations, something that almost never happened, and had to redo an entire report. By the time 5:30 arrived, her nerves were frayed. She found Camilla waiting by her car, arms crossed against the October chill. The parking garage was nearly empty, their voices echoing off the concrete walls. "Okay, I'm here." "What's going on?" Sarah asked. Camilla took a deep breath. "That thing Paula mentioned today about the blind date? It's not what you think." "Sarah, it's a setup." "What do you mean, a setup?" I overheard Paula and some others from accounting talking in the break room. "They've arranged this whole thing as some kind of office prank. The dinner is scheduled at Chez Laurent, that fancy place in the Pearl District, and they're planning to be there watching, filming it probably, laughing at the whole situation. They're calling it their entertainment for breaking the monotony of office life." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. You're kidding. I wish I was. Paula thinks it's hilarious. She kept saying things like, it'll be so funny to see Ice Queen Sarah trying to make conversation, and I wonder if she'll actually show up. Sarah, they're cruel. They're treating your life like it's some kind of reality show for their amusement. The humiliation burned through Sarah's chest, even though the date hadn't happened yet. Part of her wanted to march back upstairs and confront Paula right then and there. But another part, the part that had learned to survive by staying small and invisible, just wanted to go home and forget this day ever happened. Thanks for telling me, Sarah said quietly. I obviously won't go. Of course not. Why would you? Camilla paused, studying Sarah's face. But if you did go and you turned it around on them somehow, that would be something. Sarah shook her head. I'm not interested in playing games, Camilla. I just want to do my job and go home. I know. I know you do. I just hate seeing them treat you like this. That night, Sarah sat in her mother's room listening to the rhythmic beep of the oxygen machine and the soft sound of her mother's breathing. Margaret Mitchell had been sick for 5 years now, her lungs deteriorating slowly but steadily. The medical bills were crushing even with insurance. Sarah had taken on extra freelance work, cut every possible expense, and still barely managed to keep ahead of the debt. Her mother stirred, opening her eyes. You're thinking too loud, sweetheart, she whispered, her voice raspy. Sarah smiled despite herself. Just work stuff, Mom, nothing important. When you lie, your left eye twitches, always has since you were little. Her mother reached out a thin hand and Sarah took it carefully. What happened? Sarah hesitated, then told her mother about Paula's offer and Camilla's revelation. As she spoke, she felt the familiar anger rising, mixed with something else she couldn't quite name. Are you going to go? Her mother asked when Sarah finished. Of course not. Why would I walk into a trap? Margaret was quiet for a long moment, her eyes studying her daughter's face with that penetrating look that mothers perfect over decades. Because you're stronger than they think you are. Because you've been hiding for 3 years. And maybe it's time to stop letting what Daniel did define who you are. Because sometimes, sweetheart, the bravest thing we can do is show up anyway. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Mom, they're going to laugh at me. Let them. Their laughter says everything about who they are and nothing about who you are. You're my daughter. You're a survivor. You don't run from bullies, you face them down. Her mother squeezed her hand weakly. Besides, what if this man, whoever he is, turns out to be decent? What if refusing to go means you miss out on something real because you're too afraid of something fake? That's a lot of what-ifs. Life is made of what-ifs, baby girl. The question is which ones you're brave enough to find out. Sarah sat there long after her mother fell back asleep, wrestling with the decision. Every logical part of her brain screamed to stay home, to avoid the humiliation, to protect herself. But there was another voice, quieter but more insistent. That sounded suspiciously like her mother and maybe, just maybe, like the version of herself she used to be before Daniel broke her. By morning she had made her decision. She would go to the dinner, not because she believed in fairy tales or thought this mysterious single father would be her salvation, not even to prove anything to Paula and her cruel friends. She would go because she was tired of being afraid. She was tired of letting other people's cruelty dictate her choices. She was tired of hiding. On Friday evening, Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror trying to calm her racing heart. She had chosen a simple navy dress, nothing fancy but appropriate for an upscale restaurant. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore minimal makeup. She looked exactly like herself, which felt like both a victory and a vulnerability. The bus ride to the Pearl District took 40 minutes, giving her plenty of time to second-guess her decision approximately 17 times. But when the restaurant came into view, its warm lights glowing against the autumn darkness, she forced herself to keep walking. One foot in front of the other. That's all courage really was, she told herself. Just continuing to move forward, even when everything in you wants to run away. Chez Laurent was exactly the kind of place Sarah never went to. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, prices that could feed a family for a week. The hostess greeted her with professional warmth, checking the reservation list. Ah yes, the Dunham party. Right this way, please. Sarah followed the hostess through the dining room, acutely aware of the elegant diners, the soft classical music, the clink of expensive silverware. She didn't belong here, and everyone could probably tell. Near the windows, she spotted Paula sitting with 3 other people from the office. Their phones positioned suspiciously on the table, cameras aimed at the back section of the restaurant. The hostess led her to a table in a quieter corner, and Sarah's steps faltered. At the table sat a man, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and tired but kind eyes. And next to him, in a booster seat, was a little girl with brown curls and a stuffed bunny clutched in her small arms. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, trying to process the unexpected scene. A child. He had brought a child to a blind date. The absurdity of it momentarily overshadowed her nervousness about Paula's watching eyes. The man stood as she approached, his smile uncertain but genuine. "Sarah Mitchell!" "I'm Henry Dunham. I'm so sorry about this," he gestured to his daughter. "My sitter cancelled last minute and I couldn't reach you to reschedule. I hope it's okay that Lily joined us." The little girl looked up at Sarah with solemn brown eyes, hugging her bunny tighter. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, wearing a pink dress with a small grass stain on the hem, and light-up sneakers that blinked with every movement. "It's fine," Sarah heard herself say, sliding into the chair across from them. She wasn't sure if it actually was fine, but the genuine apology in Henry's voice and the vulnerable presence of this tiny person made her usual defenses feel unnecessary. From the corner of her eye, she could see Paula whispering to her companions, phones raised slightly, capturing this moment for their entertainment. Sarah felt heat crawl up her neck, but she forced herself to focus on the table in front of her instead of the mockery happening 20 feet away. "Lily, can you say hello to Miss Sarah?" Henry prompted gently. The little girl studied Sarah for a long moment, then whispered, "Hi, this is Mr. Hopscotch." She held up the bunny for inspection. Despite everything, despite the setup and the watchers and her own anxiety, Sarah found herself genuinely smiling. "He's very handsome. Does he like carrots?" Lily's face brightened. "He loves carrots. And cookies. Mostly cookies." "Well, Mr. Hopscotch has excellent taste," Sarah replied, and was rewarded with a giggle that sounded like bells. Henry visibly relaxed, his shoulders dropping slightly. "Thank you for being understanding about this. I know it's not exactly the traditional blind date setup." "To be honest, I'm not sure what traditional setup I was expecting," Sarah said, surprising herself with her honesty. "Her friend told me about this dinner, but I wasn't given many details." "Paula Richardson?" Henry asked, and something in his tone made Sarah look at him more carefully. "You know Paula?" Henry glanced at Lily, who was now occupied with coloring on the kids' menu the waiter had provided, then leaned forward slightly. "I work with her husband, Marcus, at the financial firm downtown. He mentioned his wife knew someone who might be nice to meet. I've been trying to get back into, well, dating, I suppose, after my wife." He paused, choosing his words carefully with Lily present. "After my wife couldn't be with us anymore." Marcus made it sound genuine. "I'm getting the feeling it might not have been." Sarah felt her stomach drop. So Henry was as much a pawn in this as she was. Paula hadn't just set her up for humiliation. She had used her own husband's colleague, and worse, had involved this innocent child in her cruel game. "I think we might both have been misled about the nature of this evening," Sarah said carefully, her anger at Paula crystallizing into something cold and sharp. "But since we're here, and since Lily seems to be having a good time, maybe we could just have dinner." Henry's expression softened with what looked like relief. "I'd like that very much. And honestly, having Lily here means the pressure's off, right? No awkward getting-to-know-you dance. Just 3 people eating dinner, one of whom is very opinionated about dessert." "I heard that, Daddy," Lily said without looking up from her coloring. "And I'm not opinionated. I just know chocolate cake is the best." "My apologies." "You're absolutely right," Henry said solemnly, though his eyes twinkled with amusement. The waiter arrived and they ordered. Sarah chose something modest, acutely aware of the prices, but Henry ordered for Lily with the ease of someone who ate at places like this regularly. Sarah filed that observation away, adding it to the growing list of things that didn't quite match what she'd expected. As they waited for the food, Henry asked about her work, and Sarah found herself talking about accounting with more enthusiasm than she knew she possessed. He listened attentively, asking intelligent questions, never once making her feel like her job was boring or beneath discussion. When she mentioned the challenges of certain software systems, he nodded with understanding. Technology is only as good as the people designing it, he said, and most designers have never actually sat in the user's chair. I'd imagine accounting software is particularly frustrating that way. You have no idea, Sarah replied, warming to the subject. Last month we spent 16 hours trying to reconcile a client's books because the software decided to randomly change its date format. 16 hours. All because someone thought MMDDYY and DDMMYY were interchangeable. Henry laughed, a genuine sound that made Lily look up and smile at her father. That sounds like a special kind of torture. It's actually what I imagine one of the circles of that bad place might be like. Just endless spreadsheet errors, Sarah said, then caught herself. She rarely joked with people outside of Camilla, certainly never on a first meeting. But something about this situation, perhaps its very absurdity, had loosened something in her. Lily had abandoned her coloring and was now watching Sarah with intense focus. "Do you have kids?" she asked suddenly, with the blunt directness only small children can achieve. "Lily, that's a personal question," Henry said gently. "It's okay," Sarah replied. "No, I don't have kids. But I have a mom who's kind of like a kid sometimes. She likes to watch cartoons and eat ice cream for breakfast when she thinks I'm not looking." Lily's eyes widened. "Your mom eats ice cream for breakfast?" "Shh, it's a secret," Sarah whispered conspiratorially, and Lily giggled again. The food arrived, and for a while they ate in comfortable silence. Sarah found herself relaxing in increments, her awareness of Paula's table fading into background noise. Lily told long, winding stories about her kindergarten class, about a boy named Tommy who ate paste, about her teacher, Miss Reeves, who had the longest hair Lily had ever seen. Henry listened with patient attention, interjecting occasionally with clarifying questions, clearly well practiced in the art of five-year-old conversation. "Daddy says you work with numbers," Lily said, pointing a French fry at Sarah for emphasis. "I like numbers. 4 is my favorite because I'm 4 3/4, which is almost 5. 4 is an excellent number," Sarah agreed. "Very reliable. Always the same, never pretends to be something it's not." "Not like 7, Lily said seriously. "7 is sneaky." Henry coughed, clearly hiding a laugh. "Lily has strong opinions about numbers. We're working on it." "No, she's right," Sarah said, playing along. 7 is definitely sneaky. "And 9 is just an upside-down 6 trying to be fancy." Lily dissolved into giggles, and Henry gave Sarah a look of such genuine gratitude that it made her chest ache. When was the last time someone had looked at her like that? Like she mattered. Like her presence was a gift rather than a burden. From Paula's table came a louder burst of laughter, and Sarah saw one of them nudging another, phone still raised. The reminder of why she was really here sent a chill through her momentary warmth. This was all a joke to them. This man, this child, her own vulnerability, all just entertainment for their Friday night. Henry noticed her expression change. "Sarah, are you okay?" She forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just thought of something I need to do Monday." He didn't look convinced but didn't push, instead turning his attention to cutting Lily's chicken into smaller pieces. The gesture was so practiced, so inherently gentle, that Sarah felt something shift in her chest. This man was a father first, everything else second. There was no performance here, no attempt to impress. He was simply himself doing what needed to be done. "Can I tell you something?" Henry said after a moment, his voice low enough that Lily, now focused on her dinner, wouldn't hear. "When Marcus first suggested this, I almost said no. I've been out of the dating world for a while, and the idea of sitting across from a stranger making small talk, hoping we'd have something in common, it terrified me. But you, Sarah, you're not what I expected at all. Is that good or bad?" Sarah asked, genuinely uncertain. "It's good, very good. You talk to Lily like she's a person, not just a cute accessory. You didn't force anything or try too hard. You're real. That's rare." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. The compliment felt foreign, like words in a language she'd forgotten how to speak. Before she could respond, Lily announced she needed to go to the bathroom, and Henry excused himself to take her. Alone at the table, Sarah allowed herself to fully acknowledge Paula's group for the first time. They were laughing, clearly pleased with whatever footage they'd captured. One of them, a man named Derek from IT, raised his phone in a mock toast toward her. The gesture was so casually cruel that Sarah felt rage bloom hot and bright in her chest. But beneath the anger was something else. A strange, defiant satisfaction. Because whatever Paula had planned, whatever humiliation she'd orchestrated, it wasn't working. The evening had been awkward, yes, unconventional certainly, but not humiliating. Henry was kind. Lily was delightful. And Sarah had laughed more in the past hour than she had in months. When Henry and Lily returned, Lily immediately launched into a detailed description of the restaurant's bathroom, which apparently had fancy soap that smells like flowers and a mirror with gold on it. Sarah listened attentively, asking questions, letting the little girl's enthusiasm wash over her like a warm tide. By the time dessert arrived, the chocolate cake Lily had predicted, Sarah realized something startling. She didn't want the evening to end. Not because of any romantic inclination toward Henry, at least not yet, but because this small table felt like a pocket of genuine human connection in a world that had felt hostile and lonely for so long. As they prepared to leave, Henry walked them out to the front of the restaurant while the valet brought his car around. The October air was crisp, and Lily held both their hands swinging between them like a tiny bridge. "I had a really nice time," Henry said. "I know this wasn't exactly standard, but I'd like to see you again if you're open to it. Maybe next time without the audience?" He nodded subtly toward the restaurant where Paula and her friends were settling their bill. "You knew?" Sarah asked, surprised. "I've worked in finance long enough to recognize when I'm being watched. I figured either they were interested in me for some nefarious reason, or they were here for you. Given that you kept glancing their way, looking progressively more uncomfortable, I assumed the latter." Sarah felt embarrassment heat her cheeks. "I'm sorry. This whole thing was a setup. I knew it before I came, and I came anyway, and I've probably made your evening incredibly awkward." "Sarah," Henry said, his voice gentle, "you made my evening wonderful. Lily had fun, I had fun, and honestly, knowing we were both set up somehow makes it better. We were both brave enough to show up despite the circumstances. That tells me something important about who you are." The valet pulled up with a sleek black car that probably cost more than Sarah made in 2 years. Henry opened the back door and began strapping Lily into her car seat. The little girl was already drooping, exhausted from the excitement of the evening. "Night-night, Miss Sarah," Lily mumbled, clutching Mr. Hopscotch. "Come see us again." "I'd like that," Sarah said, and meant it. The first text came on Sunday morning, while Sarah was sorting her mother's medications into the weekly pill organizer. Her phone buzzed, and she nearly dropped the bottle of blood pressure pills when she saw Henry's name on the screen. "Good morning. Lily wanted me to tell you that Mr. Hopscotch had pancakes for breakfast and thought you should know. Hope you're having a good weekend, Henry." Sarah stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "Please tell Mr. Hopscotch that pancakes are an excellent choice. I had oatmeal, which is far less exciting. Hope Lily isn't too tired from Friday." The response came quickly. "She talked about you all day yesterday. Informed her grandmother that you're the nicest person in Portland and that 7 is definitely sneaky. You've made quite an impression." Sarah smiled despite herself, that unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest again. Over the following weeks, the texts became a regular occurrence. Nothing heavy, nothing presumptuous, just small moments shared across the digital divide. Henry would send a photo of Lily's latest crayon masterpiece. Sarah would share a particularly absurd spreadsheet error. He'd link an article about new accounting software innovations. She'd respond with a funny story about her mother's latest scheme to sneak chocolate past Sarah's watchful eye. At work, Paula had grown strangely quiet. The Monday after the dinner, Sarah had braced herself for mockery, for whatever video or photos had been taken to be circulated around the office. But nothing came. Camilla later told her that Marcus had apparently found out about Paula's plan and had been furious, threatening to report her to HR if she used any footage from that night. It didn't erase what Paula had tried to do, but it at least contained the damage. Still, Sarah felt the weight of her colleagues' eyes on her throughout those weeks. She knew they'd seen something that night, even if they couldn't share it publicly. She was no longer invisible in the way she'd preferred. She'd become a curiosity, a story they told at happy hours she didn't attend. On the 3rd week of texting, Henry's message came with a different tone. "I know this might be forward, But Lily has an art show next Saturday at the Riverside Community Art Center. It's a children's exhibition, lots of chaos and finger paint. She asked if you might want to come. No pressure at all, but we'd both love to see you. Sarah read the message 3 times, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Her mother, who was having a good day and had been watching Sarah's face throughout this internal debate, finally spoke up. If you're trying to think of a reason to say no, stop wasting your energy. Go see the little girl's artwork. Live a little. Mom, I barely know them, so get to know them better. Sarah, sweetheart, you've been smiling at your phone for 3 weeks. I haven't seen you smile like that since before Daniel. Don't let fear steal whatever this might become. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather, one of those October gifts that felt like summer's last goodbye. Sarah spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing her outfit, finally settling on jeans and a soft green sweater her mother said brought out her eyes. She caught the bus to the Riverside Community Art Center, her stomach doing nervous flips the entire ride. The art center was a converted warehouse near the waterfront, its brick walls covered in colorful murals. Inside, the space exploded with activity. Children ran between displays, parents snapped photos, and the air smelled like tempera paint and apple juice. Sarah stood in the doorway, momentarily overwhelmed by the noise and energy. Sarah, you came. Lily's voice cut through the chaos, and suddenly the little girl was there grabbing Sarah's hand with paint-stained fingers. Come see, come see. My picture is on the wall. Henry appeared behind his daughter, looking slightly harried but genuinely happy to see her. Thank you for coming. Lily's been watching the door for the past hour. I wouldn't have missed it, Sarah said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Lily dragged her through the exhibition, chattering non-stop about each piece they passed. There were finger paintings and clay sculptures, collages made from magazine cutouts and drawings in every color imaginable. The creativity was joyful and unfiltered, the kind of art that happened when children weren't yet worried about making mistakes. Finally, they stopped in front of a large piece of construction paper mounted on the wall. Lily bounced on her toes with excitement. This is mine. I made it for you. Sarah's breath caught. The drawing was simple in the way children's art always was, but its meaning was unmistakable. 3 stick figures held hands under a rainbow that arched across the top of the page. On the left was a tall figure with dark hair, labeled in careful kindergarten letters as Daddy. In the middle was a smaller figure with curly brown hair and a pink dress, labeled Me. And on the right was another tall figure with lighter hair pulled back, wearing green. Above the 3 figures, in letters that wobbled and dipped, but were clearly written with great concentration, were the words Mommy Too. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to maintain composure, but the emotion was too big to contain. She crouched down so she was level with Lily. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Sarah said, her voice thick. Lily beamed. Miss Reeves helped me with the letters, but I did all the drawing myself. See, you're wearing green because I remembered your sweater from dinner, and Daddy said green is your favorite color, even though I don't know if he's right. And the rainbow is because rainbows are happy, and we're happy when you text us. Henry had moved closer, and Sarah could feel his presence behind her, solid and warm. She stood up, wiping discreetly at her eyes, and turned to face him. His expression was complicated, a mixture of apology and hope and something deeper she couldn't quite name. I didn't know she was going to do this, he said quietly. She asked what to draw, and I suggested she draw something that made her happy. This is what she came up with. If it's too much, if it makes you uncomfortable, I completely understand. Sarah looked back at the drawing, at those 3 simple figures holding hands under their crooked rainbow. Something inside her chest cracked open, a fissure in the wall she'd built so carefully. It doesn't make me uncomfortable, she said. It terrifies me, but in a good way, maybe. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of apple juice and cookies, of watching Lily show off her artwork to anyone who would listen, of small conversations with Henry that felt both weighty and effortless. They talked about his work, which he described vaguely as financial consulting, and her mother's health, which she described more honestly than she usually did. He asked questions that showed he was really listening, that he cared about her answers beyond mere politeness. As the exhibition began to wind down, Lily tugged on Sarah's sweater. Can you come to our house for dinner? Daddy makes really good spaghetti, and we can watch the princess movie. Sarah looked at Henry, who seemed as surprised by his daughter's invitation as she was. Lily, we talked about this. You can't just invite people over without asking first. But I am asking, Lily protested. I'm asking right now. Henry ran a hand through his hair, looking apologetic. You're absolutely welcome to come, but I don't want you to feel pressured by a very enthusiastic 5-year-old. Sarah thought about going home to her empty apartment, to microwaved leftovers, and the quiet that sometimes felt more like loneliness than peace. She thought about her mother's words, about living a little. She thought about that drawing on the wall and the way her heart had expanded looking at it. I'd love to come to dinner, she said. Lily cheered, and Henry smiled with what looked like relief. They drove to Henry's house in his car, Lily chattering from her car seat about the princess movie they were going to watch and how Sarah would love it, because the princess was very brave and had good hair. The house was in the West Hills, one of those neighborhoods Sarah had only driven through on her way to somewhere else. Tree-lined streets and houses set back from the road, the kind of quiet that came from old money and established roots. When they pulled into the driveway, Sarah's first thought was that she'd made a terrible mistake. The house was beautiful, a craftsman-style home with a wide front porch and gardens that even in October looked carefully maintained. This wasn't just nice. This was wealth, the quiet kind that didn't need to announce itself. Henry must have seen her expression change because he spoke carefully as he unbuckled Lily from her seat. I know it's a bit much. My wife's parents helped us buy it before she got sick. I keep thinking I should move somewhere smaller, but Lily loves the backyard, and I don't have the heart to make her leave the only home she really remembers. Inside was just as impressive, though clearly lived in. Toys scattered across the hardwood floors, crayon drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, a half-built Lego castle occupying the coffee table. It was a house where a child was loved, where life happened in all its messy glory. Lily immediately kicked off her light-up sneakers and ran to the living room to set up the movie. Henry headed to the kitchen, waving Sarah to follow. I wasn't kidding about the spaghetti. It's one of exactly 3 meals I can make competently. The others are scrambled eggs and grilled cheese, so you're getting the fancy option. Sarah laughed, settling onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen island. Can I help? Just keep me company. Tell me something about yourself that I don't know yet. Sarah watched him move around the kitchen with easy familiarity, pulling out a pot for pasta and a pan for sauce. What do you want to know? Anything, everything, whatever you want to share. So Sarah talked. She told him about her mother's diagnosis, about the years of trying different treatments, and watching someone she loved slowly diminish. She told him about her job, about the satisfaction of making numbers align and the frustration when they didn't. She even told him, though she wasn't sure why, about Daniel. About the betrayal and the theft, and the way it had broken something fundamental in her ability to trust. Henry listened without interrupting, his hands steady as he cooked. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, stirring the sauce thoughtfully. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. Not just the financial part, though that's devastating enough, but having your trust violated like that by 2 people you cared about. It makes sense that you'd be careful now. Careful is a nice way of putting it. Camilla calls it my fortress of solitude. Nothing wrong with protecting yourself, Henry said, as long as you leave a drawbridge somewhere for when you decide someone might be worth letting in. Before Sarah could respond to that loaded statement, Lily appeared in the doorway, already in her pajamas somehow. The movie's ready. And Daddy, I put on my pajamas early because I'm a responsible girl. You are indeed a very responsible girl, Henry agreed, turning off the stove. Okay, dinner's ready. Let's eat and then we'll start the movie. The weeks that followed the art exhibition settled into a comfortable rhythm. Henry would text in the mornings, usually with some small observation about Lily or a question about Sarah's day. They met for coffee twice, once at a busy downtown cafe where they talked about everything and nothing, while Lily colored at the table, and once at a park, where Lily insisted on showing Sarah every piece of playground equipment in meticulous detail. Sarah found herself thinking about them at odd moments during the day. She'd be reviewing a client's quarterly reports and suddenly remember something funny Lily had said, or she'd be riding the bus home and wonder what Henry was making for dinner. It was unsettling, this gradual infiltration of other people into the carefully controlled space of her life. Camilla noticed immediately. "You're different," she said one afternoon, appearing at Sarah's desk with 2 cups of terrible office coffee. "You're smiling at your computer screen, and unless our accounting software has suddenly become hilarious, I'm guessing it has to do with a certain single dad." "I'm not smiling," Sarah protested, but she could feel her face doing exactly that. "You're absolutely smiling, and you know what? It looks good on you. You deserve this, Sarah. You deserve to be happy." "I'm not sure what this even is," Sarah admitted. "We're just friends. He hasn't made any moves beyond friendship. Maybe he's being careful. Maybe he's trying to make sure you're comfortable." "That's actually pretty mature." Camilla sipped her coffee and made a face at the taste. "Has he said anything about his work?" "You said he does financial consulting." "Not much. He's pretty private about it. I get the impression it's high stress, lots of travel, but he doesn't elaborate." What Sarah didn't mention was how that vagueness sometimes bothered her. There were moments when Henry's phone would ring, and he'd glance at it with an expression she couldn't quite read before declining the call. Times when he'd mention a meeting, but not what kind. Small gaps in information that her accounting brain, trained to find discrepancies, couldn't help but notice. It was on a Wednesday evening, 3 weeks after the art show, that the gaps began to fill in. Henry had invited her to meet for coffee at a shop near his office, and Sarah had agreed, planning to go straight from her work to his. She arrived early, deciding to wait outside the building he'd mentioned rather than in the coffee shop itself. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, one of those modern towers that defined Portland's evolving skyline. Sarah stood on the sidewalk, watching people in expensive suits flow in and out of the revolving doors, when Henry emerged. But he wasn't alone. He was in the center of a small group, all of them clearly deferring to him as they walked. He was wearing a suit Sarah had never seen him in before, perfectly tailored, the kind that cost more than her monthly rent. His entire demeanor was different, more commanding, more assured. This wasn't the slightly rumpled single dad who made spaghetti and helped his daughter with art projects. This was someone else entirely. As Sarah watched, a sleek black car pulled up, and a driver stepped out to open the door. Henry said something to his companions that made them laugh, then noticed Sarah standing on the sidewalk. His expression immediately shifted, surprise giving way to something that looked almost like apprehension. He excused himself from the group and walked over to where she stood, loosening his tie slightly. "Sarah, hey, I'm so sorry, the meeting ran late. Give me 2 minutes to change and we can grab that coffee." "Change?" Sarah repeated, still processing the scene she'd just witnessed. "I keep casual clothes in the office. I hate wearing suits when I don't have to." He seemed to notice her stunned expression. "Is everything okay?" "That's Dunham Tower," Sarah said slowly, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. "The building. I've walked past it 100 times. Dunham is your name." Henry's jaw tightened slightly. "Can we talk about this somewhere more private?" They ended up in a small park 2 blocks away, sitting on a bench while joggers and dog walkers passed by in the early evening light. Henry had changed into jeans and a sweater, but the revelation of who he really was hung between them like a curtain Sarah couldn't see through. "Dunham Financial Group," Sarah said, her voice flat. "You're not a financial consultant. You founded one of the largest investment firms on the West Coast. I've read about you. They did a profile in the business section last year about your philanthropic work." "I wanted to tell you," Henry said quietly. "I've been trying to figure out how, but every time I started, it felt like it would change everything between us." "It does change everything," Sarah said, and heard the edge in her own voice. "Do you have any idea how different our worlds are? I ride the bus to work, Henry. I cut coupons. I buy my clothes from discount stores, and I'm still behind on my mother's medical bills. And you own a building with your name on it. I'm still the same person who made you spaghetti. I'm still Lily's dad who can't do her hair right and who burns toast more often than not. Are you, though?" Sarah stood up, needing to move, to put distance between herself and the man who suddenly felt like a stranger. "Because the Henry I thought I knew was just a regular guy trying to figure out parenthood, and maybe starting to date again. But the real Henry is this whole other person who probably has assistants and drivers and who lives in a completely different stratosphere than me. My money doesn't define me, Henry said, standing as well. And it certainly doesn't define what I feel when I'm with you. Sarah spun to face him. What do you feel, Henry? Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a very rich man amusing himself with someone ordinary. And when you get bored, or when your friends start asking questions about why you're slumming it with an accountant from a mid-tier firm who takes the bus, what then? That's not fair, Sarah. That's not who I am, isn't it? You lied to me. Maybe not directly, but by omission. You let me think you were someone you're not. I let you see who I really am. Henry's voice rose with frustration. The suit and the building and the money, that's what I do, not who I am. When I'm with you and Lily, making terrible jokes and eating takeout, that's me. That's the person I want to be, the person your presence lets me be. Sarah wanted to believe him. Every part of her that had started to open up over the past weeks wanted to accept his words at face value. But the scar tissue from Daniel's betrayal was too thick, too deeply embedded. Rich men didn't fall for ordinary women unless there was an angle. People like Henry didn't choose people like her unless they wanted something. I need some time, Sarah said, wrapping her arms around herself against the autumn chill. I need to think about all this. Sarah, please don't shut me out. Not over this. But she was already walking away, her mind spinning with the implications of what she'd learned. Behind her, she heard Henry call her name once, but she didn't turn around. She couldn't, because if she turned around and saw the hurt in his eyes, she might forget all the very good reasons she had for protecting herself. That night, Sarah's mother took one look at her face and patted the edge of the bed. Sarah sat and the whole story poured out. The building, the revelation, her own conflicted feelings about it all. So let me see if I understand, Margaret said when Sarah finished. You're upset because he's successful. I'm upset because he wasn't honest about it. Was he dishonest or was he just being private? There's a difference, sweetheart. Mom, you don't understand. He's not just successful, he's wealthy. Like, really wealthy. The kind of wealthy where he probably doesn't know how much things cost at the grocery store because he's never had to care. Margaret was quiet for a moment, the oxygen machine humming steadily in the background. When your father proposed to me, my parents were horrified. He was a mechanic and I was a teacher. They thought I was marrying beneath myself. They spent 2 years trying to break us up, convinced he was after my family's modest savings. Sarah frowned. I didn't know that. Because it doesn't matter. What mattered was that your father saw me. Really saw me. Not my job or my family's money or what I could do for him. He saw who I was at my core and he loved that person. The question isn't whether Henry has money. The question is whether he sees you, really sees you, and whether you're brave enough to let him. What if he hurts me? Well, what if he doesn't? What if you're so busy protecting yourself from a possibility that you miss out on something real? Sarah didn't have an answer to that. She went to bed that night with her phone on silent, ignoring the 3 texts from Henry that she could see lighting up the screen. She told herself she was being smart, being careful. But lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling, she mostly felt lonely. The next morning, Sarah discovered another complication to her already tangled emotions. She was making copies in the office supply room when Paula walked in, her expression calculating. So, Paula said, leaning against the copy machine with false casualness. I heard you've been seeing Henry Dunham. Marcus let it slip the other night. Sarah didn't look up from her copying. I don't see how that's your business. Oh, I'm just impressed. I mean, landing one of the richest men in Portland. That's quite an accomplishment for someone who wears the same 3 sweaters on rotation. The casual cruelty of it made Sarah's hands shake as she gathered her copies. What do you want, Paula? I'm just saying, when a man like that pays attention to someone like you, there's usually a reason. Maybe he's got a savior complex. Maybe he likes feeling important by helping the charity case. Paula's smile was poisonous. Just make sure you don't get too comfortable. Men like him don't end up with women like you. Not permanently. Sarah pushed past her without responding, her heart hammering against her ribs. The words shouldn't have hurt. Paula was cruel, malicious, her opinion shouldn't matter. But they echoed thoughts Sarah had already been thinking, fears she'd been trying to suppress. That afternoon, Sarah's phone rang. It was an unknown number, and normally she wouldn't have answered, but something made her pick up. Ms. Mitchell. This is Diane Reynolds. I'm the executive director of the Aurora Foundation. I'm calling because we have an event coming up next month, and Henry Dunham specifically requested that you be invited. Sarah's mind raced. I'm sorry, what foundation? At the Aurora Foundation. We fund community programs, educational initiatives, that sort of thing. The Riverside Community Arts Center, where your friend's daughter had her exhibition. We're one of their primary sponsors. Mr. Dunham founded our organization 3 years ago. He's quite passionate about giving children access to arts programs, regardless of their family's financial situation. The Art Center. The place where Lily had shown her drawing. Henry hadn't just attended, he'd funded it. The entire organization existed because of him. I don't think I can make it, Sarah said, her voice tight. But thank you for the invitation. After she hung up, Sarah sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen without seeing it. Every layer she peeled back revealed more complexity, more evidence of just how different their worlds really were. Henry didn't just have money. He changed lives with it. He built institutions. He operated on a scale Sarah couldn't even conceptualize. And she was what? A woman who counted pennies and rode the bus, and whose greatest accomplishment was keeping her mother alive for 1 more month. How could those two realities possibly coexist? For 5 days, Sarah didn't respond to Henry's messages. Each text that came through felt like a small weight, added to the pile of confusion and fear already crushing her chest. He never pushed, never demanded. Just gentle check-ins that somehow made everything worse. Lily made you a drawing. She wants to know if you're okay. I understand if you need space. Just want you to know I'm here when you're ready to talk. Missing our coffee dates. Hope you're taking care of yourself. On the 6th day, Camilla cornered her in the parking garage. Okay, intervention time. What's going on with you? Sarah leaned against her car, exhausted. Did you know Henry Dunham is actually the Henry Dunham? As in Dunham Financial Group, founded the Aurora Foundation, probably has more money than our entire neighborhood combined. Camilla's eyes widened. Wait, you're Henry, is that Dunham? The one they named building after? Exactly. And I'm supposed to what, just be okay with that? Just pretend that power differential doesn't matter. Sarah, honey, lots of people have different income levels in relationships. That doesn't automatically make them incompatible. It's not just different income levels, Camilla. It's different universes. He probably spends more on his daughter's birthday parties than I make in a year. How am I supposed to fit into that world? Taze, maybe you're not supposed to fit into his world. Maybe he wants to be in yours. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that eventually, inevitably, Henry would realize what Paula had already pointed out. She wasn't enough. She was ordinary in every way that mattered, and wealthy men didn't choose ordinary women unless there was something they wanted that couldn't be bought. On Saturday morning, Sarah broke her silence with a single text. Can we talk? Just us, no Lily. She loved the little girl, but this conversation needed to happen between adults without small ears listening. Henry's response was immediate. Yes, anywhere you want, any time. They met at a quiet diner on the east side, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that came in thick ceramic mugs. Sarah arrived first, ordering tea she didn't drink and rehearsing what she wanted to say. When Henry walked in, he looked tired. The circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. And something about that made Sarah's heart ache despite her resolve. He slid into the booth across from her, leaving space between them. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I needed time to think, Sarah said, about all of this, about what it means. And what does it mean? Henry asked quietly. It means you're you and I'm me, and those two things don't match. It means every time we're together, I'll be wondering if you're embarrassed by my clothes or my job or where I live. It means eventually, you'll realize there are 1,000 women more suited to your life. Women who know which fork to use at fancy dinners and who wear the right designer brands and who won't make you explain what the Aurora Foundation is because they're already on the board. Henry was quiet for a long moment, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. You know what the worst part of having money is? Never knowing if people see you or just see what you have. After my wife was gone, I tried dating. Well-meaning friends set me up constantly, and every single time I could see them calculating what I was worth, what I could offer, how they could leverage knowing me. He looked up, meeting her eyes. And then I met you. And you argued with Lily about which number was sneaky. You told me about accounting software problems like they actually mattered. You looked at my daughter like she was a person worthy of respect, not an obstacle to get past. You didn't want anything from me because you didn't know there was anything to want. That's why I didn't tell you at first. Because with you, I got to just be Henry. Just be a dad trying to figure things out. But you're not just Henry, Sarah said, hating how her voice cracked. You're Henry Dunham, founder of a financial empire, philanthropist, probably on 50 different boards. And I'm just Sarah who can barely keep her own life together, who can't even afford to take her mother to better doctors. You're Sarah who takes care of her mother with a devotion that humbles me. Sarah who shows up to children's art shows and genuinely appreciates stick figure drawings. Sarah who makes Lily laugh and makes me remember what it feels like to want something for myself instead of just getting through each day. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. You're not just anything, Sarah. You're extraordinary. And I'm sorry I wasn't more upfront about my circumstances, but I'm not sorry I met you. And I'm not sorry about feeling what I feel. Sarah wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But Paula's words kept echoing in her head, mixing with memories of Daniel, creating a chorus of doubt she couldn't silence. I need more time, she said finally. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I can't say yes yet. Henry nodded slowly, disappointment clear in his face, but acceptance too. Okay, I can respect that, but Sarah, I'm not going anywhere. Take whatever time you need, but know that I'm here. Lily and I, we're here. They parted ways outside the diner, and Sarah watched him drive away in that expensive car that was just one more reminder of how different they were. She went home and crawled into bed, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon, and tried to quiet her mind enough to sleep. Monday morning, everything fell apart. Sarah was making copies when her phone buzzed with a notification, then another, then another. She pulled it out, frowning at the sudden influx of social media alerts. Someone had tagged her in something. The post was from Paula's public account, and it had already been shared 40 times. The photo showed Sarah from last weekend at the park with Henry and Lily. Sarah was kneeling down, helping Lily tie her shoes, while Henry stood behind them smiling. It looked like a family photo, candid and sweet. But Paula's caption made it something else entirely. Some women will do anything for an upgrade, even play mommy to someone else's kid. Imagine being so desperate for a man's money that you pretend to care about his child. Cringe. Step monster in training. Gold digger alert. Sarah's vision blurred as she read the comments that had already accumulated. People from the office, people she'd never met, all weighing in with their opinions about her character, her motives, her worth. Wow, that's actually sad. I mean, if I could bag a billionaire, I'd probably pretend to like his kid too. She doesn't even look like she belongs in his world, LOL. The humiliation was total and immediate. Sarah's hands shook so badly she dropped her phone. Around her, the office had gone quiet. People were staring at their screens, then at her, then quickly looking away. The pity in their expressions was somehow worse than mockery would have been. Camilla appeared at her side, fury radiating from her. Sarah, don't look at it anymore. Don't give Paula the satisfaction. But it was too late. Sarah had already seen, had already absorbed every cruel word, every laughing emoji, every share that spread her private pain across an increasingly public stage. She walked to her desk like someone in a dream, aware that everyone was watching but unable to care. With mechanical precision, she opened her drawer and pulled out the small cardboard box she kept for office supplies. She began filling it with her few personal items. Her photo of her mother, a coffee mug Camilla had given her last Christmas, the small succulent plant that had somehow survived 3 years on her desk. "Sarah, what are you doing?" Camilla hissed, grabbing her arm. "I quit," Sarah said, her voice eerily calm. "I can't work here anymore. Not with everyone knowing, not with everyone thinking I'm some kind of opportunist, using a little girl to get to her wealthy father. You can't let Paula win like this. Report her to HR. Sue her for defamation. Something. I don't want to fight Camilla, I just want to disappear." She walked to her supervisor's office and tendered her resignation, effective immediately. The supervisor, clearly aware of the social media situation, didn't argue. Within an hour, Sarah was walking out of the building for the last time, her pitiful box of belongings under her arm and her professional reputation in tatters. Her phone had been buzzing non-stop. Henry had seen the post, of course he had. Someone had probably sent it to him within minutes of Paula posting it. "Sarah, please call me. This is outrageous. We can fix this. Please don't make any decisions until we talk." But Sarah couldn't talk to him, couldn't face him knowing that the internet had just validated every fear she'd had about their incompatibility. She blocked his number, blocked it before she could second-guess herself, before his words could weaken her resolve. This was for the best, she told herself. Better to end it now before Lily got more attached, before Sarah got more attached, before the inevitable rejection, when Henry realized she'd been right all along about them being from different worlds. She went home and told her mother she'd quit her job, though not the full reason why. Margaret looked at her with knowing eyes but didn't push, just held her daughter while Sarah cried for the first time since Daniel for the loss of something that had barely begun but had felt for a brief moment like it might be real. The Aurora Foundation invitation was still sitting on her desk. The event was in 2 weeks. Sarah tore it up and threw it away. She spent the next 3 days in a fog, mechanically updating her resume and filling out job applications while ignoring the dozens of messages that kept coming through despite her blocks. Henry had started texting from different numbers, each message more desperate than the last. "Sarah, please just let me know you're okay. Lily doesn't understand where you went. What do I tell her? I don't care about the post. I don't care what anyone thinks. I care about you." Each message was a knife sliding between her ribs, but Sarah forced herself not to respond. This was necessary. This was self-preservation. This was her protecting all of them from a future that couldn't work. On the 4th day, someone buzzed her apartment intercom at 7 in the morning. Sarah ignored it. They buzzed again and again. Finally, annoyed, she pressed the button. "What? Sarah Mitchell, if you don't let me up right now, I'm going to stand down here and tell every person walking by what an idiot you're being. Camilla." Sarah buzzed her in, too tired to fight. When Camilla appeared at her door, she looked furious in a way Sarah had never seen. "Okay. Intervention time for real," Camilla announced, pushing past her into the apartment. "You quit your job. You blocked a man who cares about you. You're hiding in here like you did something wrong when the only person who did anything wrong is Paula and her mob of mean girls." "Camilla, I can't do this right now." "Too bad, because we're doing this right now." Camilla planted herself on the couch, arms crossed. "Do you know what I think? I think you're scared. I think Henry Dunham is the first person since Daniel who made you feel something real, and that terrifies you. So you're using this post, using Paula's cruelty, as an excuse to run away before you have to take a real risk. That's not fair." "Life isn't fair, Sarah. You think I don't know that. You think any of us don't know that. But you can't let fear make all your decisions. You can't let what Daniel did 3 years ago dictate what you do today." "You don't understand," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "You didn't see those comments. You didn't read what people were saying about me. I saw them, every single one, and you know what? They're wrong. Every person who thinks they know your motivations based on one malicious post is wrong." Camilla moved closer, her voice softening. "But more importantly, Henry knows they're wrong. He's been trying to reach you for days, Sarah. That man is not embarrassed by you or questioning your motives. He's worried sick. He should move on, find someone appropriate, someone from his world." "Oh, for God's sake, listen to yourself," Camilla exploded. "You sound like you're in some Victorian novel where the poor governess can't possibly marry the rich lord because of propriety. This is modern-day Portland, not a Jane Austen book. People from different economic backgrounds get together all the time." "You don't know what it's like," Sarah whispered. "Watching him in that building, seeing the way people deferred to him. He has power I can't even conceptualize. And I'm just me. Just you. Sarah, you're one of the strongest people I know. You've kept your mother alive through sheer force of will and determination. You survived a betrayal that would have broken most people. You show up every single day and do the work, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. Camilla grabbed both of Sarah's hands, forcing her to make eye contact. You're not less than Henry Dunham. You're just different. And maybe, just maybe, he needs different. Maybe Lily needs different. Maybe what they need is someone who sees them as people, not as wealth or status or opportunity. What if I'm not enough? The question came out small and broken, the core fear Sarah had been carrying since the night she'd seen that building with Henry's name on it. What if you are? What if you're exactly enough? Camilla pulled her into a hug, and Sarah finally let herself collapse against her friend's shoulder. You can't keep running from possibilities because you're afraid of pain. That's not living, Sarah. That's just existing. They sat like that for a long time, Sarah crying out weeks of accumulated fear and confusion while Camilla held her and made soothing sounds. When Sarah finally pulled back, her face was swollen and her eyes were red, but something had shifted inside her chest. A small crack in the armor, letting light seep through. I don't know how to fix this, Sarah admitted. Even if I wanted to, I've blocked him, quit my job, basically blown up everything. How do I come back from that? You start by unblocking him and reading what he's been trying to tell you. Then you decide what you actually want, not what you think you should want or what you're afraid of wanting. What does Sarah Mitchell, stripped of all the fear and trauma, actually want for her life? After Camilla left, Sarah sat on her couch staring at her phone for what felt like hours. Finally, with shaking hands, she unblocked Henry's number. Immediately, messages began flooding in, dozens of them spread over the past 4 days. She read them chronologically, watching his tone shift from confusion to worry to desperation, and finally to resignation. The last message, sent just that morning, made her eyes fill with fresh tears. I'm respecting your choice, Sarah. I won't contact you again unless you reach out first. But I need you to know something. That night at Chez Laurent, when I saw you walk in, I thought you were the bravest person I'd ever met. You knew it was a setup. Camilla told me later that you knew, and you came anyway. That kind of courage is rare. Don't lose it now. Don't let cruel people make you small. You deserve so much more than you believe you do. Lily misses you. I miss you. But more than that, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. Take care of yourself. H. Sarah read it 3 times, each word hitting her like a small revelation. He wasn't angry. He wasn't dismissive. He was letting her go because he thought that's what she needed, even though it was clearly breaking his heart to do it. Her mother shuffled into the living room, her oxygen tank wheeling behind her. She took one look at Sarah's face and sighed. You're thinking too hard again. Mom, I messed everything up. Then unmess it, Margaret said, simply settling into her chair. Life's too short for pride, sweetheart. If you want him, if you want that life with him and his daughter, then go get it. Stop waiting for permission or perfect circumstances. Just go get it. What if he doesn't want me anymore? What if I pushed him away too many times? Then at least you'll know. At least you tried. That's all we can ever do, baby girl. Try and hope and try again. Sarah spent the next 2 days thinking, really thinking, not just spiraling in fear. She thought about Henry's patience, about the way he'd never once made her feel inferior. She thought about Lily's drawing, those 3 stick figures holding hands under their crooked rainbow. She thought about the messages he'd sent, consistent and kind even when she'd given him nothing but silence in return. And she thought about herself, about the woman she'd been before Daniel, the one who took risks and believed in possibilities. That woman was still in there somewhere, buried under layers of protective cynicism, but not gone, not entirely. On the 3rd day, Sarah did something she hadn't done in years. She went to the library and looked up everything she could find about the Aurora Foundation, not because she doubted Henry, but because she wanted to understand this part of his life, the part he'd built from his own pain. What she found humbled her. The foundation wasn't just some rich man's tax write-off. It was a genuine force for good, funding programs across the Pacific Northwest, arts programs, literacy initiatives, mental health services for children who'd experienced loss. Every single program seemed designed to help kids process and move through pain rather than be buried by it. There was an article from 2 years ago, an interview with Henry, about why he'd started the foundation. His wife, Rebecca, had been a child psychologist who believed deeply in the healing power of creativity and expression. When she'd gotten sick, when it became clear she wouldn't survive, She'd made him promise to continue her work somehow. The Aurora Foundation was his way of keeping that promise. Sarah sat in the library reading about this man she thought she'd known, realizing she'd only seen the smallest fraction of who he was. And that fraction had been enough to make her care deeply. What might the whole picture reveal? That evening, she finally responded to his message. Just 3 words, but they felt like jumping off a cliff. "Can we talk?" His response came through within seconds, as if he'd been holding his phone waiting. "Yes, anytime, anywhere." They agreed to meet the next day at the same park where they'd had their revelation conversation. Sarah spent the night rehearsing what she wanted to say, though she knew the moment she saw him, all her carefully planned words would probably dissolve. He was already there when she arrived, sitting on the same bench, looking out at the river. He stood when he saw her approaching, and Sarah was struck again by how tired he looked. Like he hadn't been sleeping, like worry had carved new lines around his eyes. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy. "Hi," he replied, and the warmth in his voice nearly undid her. They sat down, leaving space between them. Two people navigating unfamiliar territory with care. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, "for blocking you, for disappearing, for not trusting what we had enough to fight for it." "You don't have to apologize. I'm the one who should be sorry. I should have told you about my circumstances earlier. I should have given you the choice to walk away before feelings got involved." "Henry, I need to tell you something." Sarah took a deep breath. "When Daniel took my money and left, he didn't just steal savings. He stole my ability to trust that anyone could want me for me. I've spent 3 years believing that I wasn't enough, that any interest someone showed had to have an ulterior motive. And when I found out about your money, about your foundation, about all of it, every old fear came rushing back." She turned to look at him, needing him to see her face, to understand. "But these past few days, thinking about everything, I realized something. You never made me feel less than, not once. You never looked at my life and found it lacking. You never suggested I needed to change or be different. You just accepted me exactly as I am. And I'm sorry it took me so long to trust that." Henry was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching her face. "That post Paula made, the things people said, they were horrible. I had my lawyers draft a cease and desist, and she took it down within hours. But the damage was done, and I'm so sorry you had to endure that. It wasn't your fault." "No, but it happened because of me. Because being associated with me puts a target on your back. That's something I need you to understand if we're going to move forward. There will always be people who judge, who make assumptions, who think they know our story. I can't control that." "I don't need you to control it," Sarah said. "I just need you to be patient with me when I get scared. When the doubts creep in, I'm working on trusting again, but it's not going to happen overnight." "I can do patient," Henry said, and finally, he reached for her hand. His fingers were warm as they intertwined with hers. "Sarah, I'm not asking you to fit into my world. I'm asking if maybe we can build our own world. One where it doesn't matter what I do for a living, or where you went to school, or how much money is in anyone's bank account. Just a world where we get to be ourselves together." "What about Lily?" Sarah asked. "That post said terrible things about my relationship with her. Lily drew a picture of the 3 of us as a family before we'd even been on one official date," Henry said with a slight smile. "That child has the best instincts of anyone I know. She knew before I did that you were special. And she's been asking about you every single day, wanting to know when her friend Sarah is coming back." "I've missed her too," Sarah admitted. "I've missed both of you." "Then come to the Aurora Foundation Gala," Henry said. "It's next week. I'm giving the keynote speech, and I'd really like you to be there. Not as my date necessarily, just as someone who matters to me. Someone I want to share that part of my life with." Sarah thought about it. Thought about walking into a room full of wealthy people, of facing potential judgment, of stepping into Henry's world in such a public way. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to keep herself safe. But then she thought about Lily's drawing, about Henry's patience, about her mother's words that life was made of what-ifs, and the question was which ones you were brave enough to find out. "Okay," she said. "I'll come." Henry's smile was like sunrise, warm and transformative. Yeah, but Henry, I don't have anything appropriate to wear to a gala. I don't even know what a gala is really." He actually laughed, and pulled her closer. "It's just a fancy dinner with speeches. Wear whatever makes you comfortable. I promise nobody who matters will care. They sat there for a long time, hands clasped, watching the river flow past and talking about everything and nothing. Sarah told him about quitting her job, and he offered to make some calls, but she declined. She wanted to find her next position on her own terms. She told him about her mother's declining health, about the fear that haunted her every day that she'd lose the only family she had left. And Henry told her about Rebecca, about the brutal 2 years of watching someone you love slip away piece by piece, about the guilt of feeling relief when it finally ended, because at least she wasn't suffering anymore. Lily doesn't really remember her, he said quietly. She was only 2 when Rebecca couldn't be with us anymore. Sometimes that feels like a blessing, that Lily doesn't have to carry the weight of those memories. But sometimes it feels like a tragedy, that she'll never know how amazing her mother was. You can tell her, Sarah said. You can make sure she knows. That's what keeps people with us, right? The stories we tell about them. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Henry walked Sarah to her bus stop. Before she got on, he pulled her into a hug, and Sarah let herself sink into it, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. "See you at the gala," he said against her hair. "See you at the gala," she confirmed. The bus ride home felt different this time, lighter somehow, as if deciding to take a chance had lifted a weight Sarah hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. When she got home, her mother took one look at her face and smiled. "That's my girl," Margaret said. "That's my brave girl." The week leading up to the gala passed in a strange blur of nervous anticipation and careful hope. Sarah had 3 job interviews lined up, all at firms that had no connection to her previous workplace. She'd decided to be honest in her interviews about why she'd left, framing it as needing a fresh start. 2 of the 3 seemed receptive. It felt like progress. Camilla had insisted on helping her find something to wear to the gala, dragging Sarah to a consignment shop that sold high-end dresses at reasonable prices. After trying on what felt like 50 options, Sarah had chosen a simple navy gown that reminded her of the dress she'd worn to that first dinner at Chez Laurent. The woman in the mirror looked elegant in a way Sarah barely recognized, but it was still her. Just her, slightly elevated. "You look beautiful," Camilla had said, tears in her eyes. "Henry's going to lose his mind." "That's not why I'm going," Sarah had protested, but she'd been smiling. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonable rain, the kind of November storm that made Portland feel more like a watercolor painting than a real city. Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her hair for the 10th time, trying to calm her racing heart. Her mother appeared in the doorway, oxygen tank trailing behind her, looking at Sarah with undisguised pride. "So you look just like you did at your senior prom, remember? You wore navy then too. I remember you crying when I came down the stairs." "I'm crying now too," Margaret admitted, dabbing at her eyes. "My baby girl going to a fancy gala with a man who looks at her like she hung the moon." "Mom, don't. You'll make me cry and ruin my makeup." "Then let me say this quickly. I'm proud of you, Sarah. Not for going to this party or for dating someone successful. I'm proud because you're choosing to be brave. You're choosing to risk your heart even though it's scary. That takes more courage than most people have." A car horn honked outside, and Sarah peered out the window to see Henry's car idling at the curb. He'd offered to pick her up, saying no one should have to take the bus to a gala in the rain. Sarah hugged her mother carefully, mindful of the oxygen tubes. "I love you, Mom. Love you too, sweetheart. Now go before he thinks you've changed your mind." The ride to the venue was quiet but comfortable. Henry kept glancing at her with an expression that made Sarah's stomach flutter. Finally, she asked, "Well, what?" "You're breathtaking," he said simply. "I know you said you didn't have anything appropriate, but Sarah, you could show up in jeans and a t-shirt, and you'd still be the most beautiful person there. You're required to say that. I'm required to say nothing. I'm choosing to say it because it's true." The gala was being held at the Portland Art Museum, a venue Sarah had visited exactly once on a school field trip in high school. As they pulled up, she could see people in evening wear streaming through the entrance, photographers capturing arrivals, a level of elegance that made her earlier confidence waver. Henry must have sensed her anxiety because he squeezed her hand. "Hey, remember this is just dinner and speeches. The setting is fancy, but the people are just people. Some good, some not so much, all of them human. What if someone recognizes me? From that post? Then they recognize you. Sarah, you didn't do anything wrong. You have nothing to be ashamed of. He came around to open her door, and Sarah took a deep breath before stepping out into the rain. Henry immediately moved to shield her with his umbrella, his hand finding the small of her back as they walked toward the entrance. The gesture was protective without being possessive, and Sarah found herself relaxing into it. Inside, the museum had been transformed into a glittering wonderland. String lights draped the galleries, round tables with ivory linens filled the main hall, and servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Sarah's grocery budget for a week. Classical music played softly in the background, and everywhere Sarah looked, she saw beautiful people in beautiful clothes talking about things she couldn't quite hear. Henry! A woman in a stunning red dress approached them, her smile professional but warm. So glad you could make it. Diane's been worried you'd bail on your own event. I wouldn't dare, Henry replied easily. Sarah, this is Catherine Winters. She's on our board. Catherine, this is Sarah Mitchell. Catherine's eyes widened slightly in recognition, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. But instead of judgment, the woman's expression shifted to something like respect. Sarah, I'm so pleased to meet you. Henry's told us all about you. Well, not all apparently, since he failed to mention how lovely you are. They chatted for a few minutes about the Foundation's work before Catherine excused herself to greet other guests. As she walked away, Henry leaned down to whisper, "See? Just people." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of introductions. Sarah met board members and major donors, program directors and community partners. Some of them clearly knew who she was from Paula's post, but to her surprise, no one said anything cruel. A few were overly kind in a way that suggested pity, which Sarah hated, but most treated her with simple courtesy. She found herself relaxing degree by degree, even managing to engage in a genuine conversation with the director of the Riverside Community Art Center about Lily's artwork and the importance of creative expression for young children. Henry's daughter has real talent, the director said, and she talks about you constantly. Says you're the one who taught her about sneaky numbers. Sarah laughed despite herself. That was definitely a joint effort. As dinner was announced and guests began finding their seats, Sarah realized Henry had seated her at his table, right next to him. On her other side was an empty chair that filled moments later with an older woman who introduced herself as Eleanor, Henry's mother-in-law, Rebecca's mother. Sarah's anxiety spiked immediately. This was Rebecca's mother, the mother of the woman whose place Sarah would never fill. But Eleanor smiled at her kindly, studying her face with interest. So you're Sarah. Lily's told me all about you. Apparently you have opinions about the number 7. It's definitely suspicious, Sarah said carefully, trying to read the older woman's expression. Rebecca would have liked you, Eleanor said after a moment. She always said Henry needed someone who could see past the surface, who could appreciate him for who he was, rather than what he had. I think she'd be happy knowing he found that. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for you, seeing him with someone else. It's healing, Eleanor corrected gently. He loved my daughter deeply, and that love gave us Lily. But Rebecca wouldn't have wanted him to stop living. She'd have wanted him to find joy again, to give Lily a family again. If that's you, Sarah, then I'm grateful. Dinner was served course after elegant course while speakers took turns at the podium talking about the Foundation's work and impact. Sarah listened to stories of children who'd been helped, programs that had transformed communities, lives that had been changed through the generosity and vision of this organization Henry had built from his grief. Finally, Diane Reynolds took the microphone to introduce the evening's keynote speaker. Henry Dunham needs no introduction to this crowd. He's our founder, our guiding force, and a man whose commitment to helping children process and heal from loss has touched countless lives. Please welcome Henry to the stage. The applause was warm and genuine as Henry stood, squeezing Sarah's hand once before walking to the podium. He looked confident up there, comfortable in a way that reminded Sarah of the man she'd seen outside that office building. But when he began to speak, his voice carried a vulnerability that made the huge room feel intimate. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began. Every year I stand at this podium and talk about the importance of our work, about the children we serve, about the communities we support. And every year I'm humbled by your generosity and commitment to our mission." He paused, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Sarah. "But tonight, I want to talk about something different. I want to talk about second chances and the courage it takes to accept them." Sarah's heart began to pound. This wasn't the speech he'd described. This was something else entirely. 6 years ago, I experienced a loss that I thought would define the rest of my life. My wife, Rebecca, was taken from us too soon, and I was left to figure out how to be a father, how to run a business, how to simply get through each day without the person who'd been my anchor. For a long time, I was just surviving, going through the motions, showing up but not really present. The room had gone completely quiet, everyone leaning forward to hear. I started this foundation because Rebecca believed in the healing power of creativity and expression. She believed that children needed safe spaces to process their pain, to turn their grief into something meaningful. I thought I was honoring her memory by doing this work, but what I realize now is that I was also hiding behind it, using the foundation as a way to avoid dealing with my own loss, my own need to heal and move forward. Henry's voice grew stronger, more certain. "A few months ago, I was set up on a blind date. Someone thought it would be funny to watch the rich guy try to make conversation with a woman who had no interest in his money or status. It was meant to be entertainment, a joke at both our expenses." Sarah saw heads turning, people whispering. They all knew who he was talking about. But that night changed everything, because I met someone who looked at my daughter like she mattered, who engaged in ridiculous conversations about which numbers are trustworthy, who showed up even though she knew it was a setup, because she refused to let cruel people make her small. That kind of courage, that kind of genuine humanity is rare. Henry looked directly at Sarah now, his eyes locked on hers. "Sarah Mitchell taught me something important. She taught me that healing doesn't mean forgetting, that moving forward doesn't mean leaving behind what we've loved, that second chances aren't betrayals of our past, they're honors to it. They're proof that the love we experienced was real enough to teach us how to love again." Tears were streaming down Sarah's face now, and she didn't care who saw. The work we do here at the Aurora Foundation is about giving children permission to heal, to create, to express themselves without judgment. But we can't teach children to be brave if we aren't brave ourselves. We can't tell them it's okay to take risks if we're too afraid to take our own. Henry paused, then did something completely unexpected. He stepped away from the podium and walked down the stairs, straight towards Sarah's table. The room erupted in whispers, cameras flashing as people realized something significant was happening. Sarah's heart hammered so loudly she was certain everyone in the room could hear it. Henry walked toward her with purpose, his eyes never leaving her face, and the crowd seemed to hold its collective breath. When he reached her table, he extended his hand. "Sarah, would you come up here with me?" For a moment, Sarah couldn't move. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to avoid becoming the center of attention in a room full of Portland's elite. But then she remembered her mother's words about being brave, and Lily's drawing of 3 figures holding hands, and Camilla's insistence that she deserved to be chosen. She placed her hand in Henry's and stood. The room erupted in applause as he led her back to the stage, his grip steady and reassuring. At the podium, with hundreds of eyes on them, Sarah felt simultaneously exposed and protected. Henry kept her hand in his, addressing the crowd but speaking to her. "When I met Sarah, she had every reason to distrust me. She'd been hurt before by someone who took advantage of her kindness and generosity. She had walls built so high that most people wouldn't have tried to climb them. But I saw something in her that first night, something worth fighting for." He turned to face her fully now, ignoring the cameras and the whispers and the weight of all those watching eyes. "You told me once that you weren't enough, that someone like me couldn't possibly want someone like you for real. But Sarah, you have it backwards. I'm the one who's not enough. Not enough patient, not enough understanding, not enough honest about my life and circumstances. You are extraordinary in ways that have nothing to do with money or status, or anything that can be measured in conventional terms." Sarah's tears were falling freely now, but she was smiling through them. "I love how you count out exact change at coffee shops because you appreciate the value of every dollar. I love how you remember small details about people others forget. I love how you talk to Lily like she's a whole person whose opinions matter. I love your terrible jokes about spreadsheets and your fierce loyalty to the people you care about." His voice cracked slightly. "I love that you chose to be brave, even when everything in you wanted to hide. That's the kind of courage I want Lily to learn. That's the kind of love I want to build a life around." The room was completely silent now, except for a few sniffles from guests who were clearly as affected as Sarah was. "I'm not asking you to change. I'm not asking you to fit into my world or become someone you're not. I'm asking if you'll let me be part of yours, if you'll take a chance on building something new together, something that belongs to both of us and to Lily, something real and messy and complicated and beautiful." Sarah found her voice, shaky but clear. "Henry, I'm terrified. I know. So am I. What if I mess this up? What if I can't do this? Then we'll mess it up together and figure it out together. That's what love is, isn't it? Choosing someone and then choosing them again every day, even when it's scary, even when it's hard." Sarah looked out at the crowd, at all these people witnessing this moment. She saw Eleanor with tears streaming down her face, nodding encouragement. She saw Diane Reynolds with her hand over her heart. She saw strangers moved by a love story that had started with cruelty, but had somehow transformed into something pure, and she realized something fundamental. This moment wasn't about proving anything to these people. It wasn't about showing Paula or her former colleagues that she deserved to be here. It was about choosing herself, choosing happiness, choosing to believe that she was worth the kind of love Henry was offering. "Okay," she said, and then louder so everyone could hear, "Yes, yes, I want to build something with you." Henry pulled her into a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise, and the room exploded into applause and cheers. Somewhere in the noise, Sarah thought she heard someone sobbing happily, but she was too focused on the man holding her, on the way his arms felt like home, to care about anything else. When they finally broke apart, Henry spoke into the microphone one last time. "Thank you all for being here tonight, for supporting this foundation and the work we do. But more than that, thank you for witnessing this moment, for reminding me that love isn't something to hide or be ashamed of, no matter how or where it begins." As they walked off the stage hand in hand, the applause following them, Sarah felt lighter than she had in years. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and well wishes. People she'd never met came up to share their own stories of second chances and finding love unexpectedly. Eleanor hugged her tight and whispered, "Welcome to the family, dear." Even some of the people who'd clearly seen Paula's post made a point of coming over to say how wrong they'd been to judge. As the event wound down, Henry pulled her aside to a quiet corner. "There's someone who wanted to say goodnight to you." He pulled out his phone and video called, and Lily's face appeared on the screen, pajama-clad and sleepy. "Miss Sarah." The little girl squealed. "Grandma Eleanor just called and said, 'Daddy kissed you at the fancy party.'" Sarah laughed, fresh tears springing to her eyes. "He did. Was that okay with you?" "It's perfect. Does this mean you're going to be my mommy too, for real now?" Sarah looked at Henry, who was watching her with such tenderness it made her chest ache. "If you want me to be." I want. I have to go tell Mr. Hopscotch." And just like that she was gone, leaving Henry and Sarah laughing at the phone. "She's been planning our wedding for weeks," Henry admitted. "Fair warning, it involves a bouncy castle and a chocolate fountain." "That sounds perfect," Sarah said, and meant it. They left the gala together, stepping out into the November night. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed clean and glistening under the streetlights. Instead of getting in the car immediately, they walked hands clasped, talking about everything and nothing. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now we figure it out as we go," Henry said. "You find a job you love. We introduce you properly to Lily, as someone who's going to be around for the long term. We take things at whatever pace feels right. We make mistakes and forgive each other and keep choosing each other. That simple? That complicated?" he corrected with a smile. "But worth it. Every bit of it worth it." 3 months later, Sarah stood in Henry's kitchen, which had become their kitchen, making pancakes for Lily, who was explaining in great detail why 5 was actually a better number than 4, now that she was almost 5.5. Her mother had been moved into a care facility near their house, where she received better treatment than Sarah had ever been able to afford on her own. Margaret's health had stabilized, and she spent her afternoons teaching art classes to the other residents. Her creativity, finding new outlet even in the face of her limitations. Sarah had taken a position at a non-profit organization that provided financial literacy education to underserved communities. The pay was less than her previous job, but the work felt meaningful in a way numbers in corporate spreadsheets never had. Henry had offered to support her, so she wouldn't have to work at all. But Sarah had been firm about maintaining her independence, and he'd respected that. They hadn't gotten married yet, despite Lily's continued lobbying for the bouncy castle wedding. But they were building something solid, taking time to learn each other's rhythms and patterns, to integrate their lives rather than force them together. Paula had been fired from her position after the cease and desist, and while Sarah didn't take pleasure in anyone losing their job, she couldn't deny a certain satisfaction in that particular instance of karma. Camilla had been promoted to senior analyst and came over for dinner every Sunday, bringing stories from the office and reminding Sarah that she had been valued there, just not by the right people. As Sarah flipped pancakes and listened to Lily's mathematical theories, Henry came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "Happy?" he murmured. "Terrified and happy," she corrected. "Is that allowed?" "I think that's the only way to be really alive." Sarah leaned back against him, watching Lily through the kitchen doorway, as she carefully arranged her stuffed animals in a circle for what she called a very important meeting about breakfast. This life, this strange, unexpected, complicated life was hers, not because she'd compromised or changed or made herself smaller, but because she'd chosen to be brave enough to accept it. Love, Sarah had learned, wasn't about being swept away or losing yourself in someone else. It was about being seen fully and choosing to stay anyway. It was about building something together from honesty and patience and the daily decision to show up for each other. It was, she thought, as Lily called them to join the Stuffed Animal Breakfast Council, exactly enough. Dear listeners, we hope Sarah and Henry's story has touched your hearts. Love often finds us in the most unexpected places, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is open our hearts again after being hurt. This story reminds us that we all deserve to be chosen, to be seen, and to be loved for exactly who we are. If this story resonated with you, we have a special playlist prepared with equally captivating stories about second chances, courage, and the transformative power of love. You can find it by clicking on your left side. If you enjoyed Sarah and Henry's journey, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the beauty of human connection. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between protecting your heart and taking a risk on love? Share your story with us. We're waiting for you in the comments section, and we can't wait to bring you more stories that celebrate the courage it takes to live and love fully.